Tonight on CTV3 News, couple survives a shooting attack during sleep. Authorities seek suspect. Believes to host a tri-national roundtable to promote sustainable livestock and conservation in the Selva Maya. Foreign Minister considers petition to revoke Israeli visa exemption amid public support and regional debate. And MJC celebrates the spirit of compassion and community support. We'll show you how. These are some of the stories we have for you tonight in our newscast for Wednesday, September 24th, 2025.
Looking for quality, tasty, and easy to prepare meals? Look no farther. M&M Frozen Foods, proudly distributed by United Distributors Limited, brings you a wide range of delicious frozen delights, perfect for every occasion. From frozen pizzas, quesadillas, garlic bread, jumbo samosa, cocktail samosas, pizza pockets, spring rolls, and happy noodles, M&M Frozen Foods is fresh, flavorful, and convenient for busy lifestyles. Whether you're planning a quick dinner, hosting a gathering, or stocking up for the week, M&M Frozen Foods has you covered. Available now at leading supermarkets and stores nationwide through United Distributors Limited. M&M Frozen Foods, extensive variety to satisfy every craving.
Good evening with your news, also simulcast on Fiesta FM 106.7. I am Joanna Rodriguez. Joel Carr and Kayla Gonzalez had a close brush with death in the early hours today when gunfire disrupted the tranquility of their home. Authorities report that an unknown assailant arrived at the couple's residence and discharged several rounds through their bedroom window while they were asleep. Both Carr and Gonzalez sustained gunshot wounds but were promptly taken to the hospital. Officials confirmed that their injuries are not critical and they are currently recuperating in a stable condition. The police are actively investigating the case and are asking the public for any information that could lead to identifying the shooter. Belize is this week hosting the National Roundtable for Sustainable Livestock in the Selva Maya, a two-day event that brings together representatives from Belize, Guatemala, and Mexico to chart a common path towards balancing economic development and environmental conservation in one of the region's most biodiverse landscapes. The roundtable aims to integrate governments, livestock producers, financial institutions, and conservation partners into an alliance that can combine skills, share resources, and jointly tackle the complex challenges facing the sector. Organizers say the initiative reflects a recognition that no single sector actor can succeed alone in being a sustainable and competitive livestock industry in the Selva Maya region.
We'll be able to expect that through this discussion, we'll be able to put together a particular framework where the three countries can sit down, follow a plan to ensure that the tri-national parties can actually follow this plan. We want to mitigate deforestation in the area. We know that livestock has been blamed for a lot of deforestation, water contamination, loss of biodiversity. So through this dialogue, we expect that we can get a framework together where each country will be able to follow this particular framework. Now we also know that funding is a major problem. So if we can pool our resources together, both Belize, Guatemala, and Mexico, we expect that through this type of dialogue, then the we can maximize the use of resources, and hopefully in the future we can have better management of this area. Livestock is very important for small producers in Belize, Mexico, and Guatemala, but they are also blamed for the deforestation and the malpractice and mismanagement of the forest. We expect that through this dialogue we can have better forest management, better climate smart agriculture practices, silvopastoral system, and the goal generally is to have better market as well, because you just can't be producing and putting all these things in place without market. So market will also be one of the discussion today as well.
Is this the first time that officials from 3 countries are coming together?
It is not the first time, but it is the first time we're doing this magnitude. The Ministry of Agriculture have always been dialoguing with partners in Mexico and Guatemala, and likewise they are dialoguing with us. But to have everybody together around the same table, we have the farmers as well, we have the livestock associations, we have the financial institutions, as I mentioned. So we have a better and more structured, robust group of people that can have a very good and informative decision. It's a 2-day session. We're starting today, and by tomorrow we should be completed, and hopefully we can have the framework that we're looking at.
Livestock farming is a vital source of income for rural families across 3 countries, but it has also been identified as a leading driver of deforestation and landscape degradation. The sector additionally faces mounting challenges, including the illegal movement of cattle across borders, while threatens animal health, competitiveness, and reputation.
What we do with dialogue with farmers to ensure that we can have better management cross-border and likewise trade. You know, we do sell a high percentage of our cattle to Guatemala informally, and we have a formal market with Mexico. So the dialogue around these formal and informal border, that's what we are functioning with, and that is what we try to focus on.
So you don't focus on the illegal trade?
We focus on the informal market, which is Belize and Guatemala. We all know that cattle passes through Bullet Tree area.
Is there any thinking of actually formalizing that?
I can say that, and we have discussed this several times in the ministry. Formal market is important, and that's why we have established the trade with Mexico, right? If we've said countless times, it's difficult to keep on having trade informally. We need to try to formalize these markets, and the first step is to have that trade with Mexico, which is what we have done. So eventually we want to move towards that for Guatemala, but that will take some time as well.
For the Belize Livestock Producers Association, BLPA, the roundtable is a chance to elevate the voice of farmers as it represents an opportunity for the region to move beyond short-term fixes and begin developing coordinated strategies that improve productivity while reducing environmental harm.
Concerns from the membership are always there in relation to the issue of deforestation, more from a policy standpoint. What we have to understand as well in Belize, from any productive sector, we are always trying to improve those sectors. Just simply from a livestock standpoint, the traditional thought is improving mean extending, and the reality is with technology today, improving mean intensifying. And so that intensification basically means, for example, in Belize, we are at basically 0.5 stocking rate, 0.5 animal per acre, right? while with new technologies, just simply allowing for your animal to rotate, managing your animals more carefully in that light, managing pasture, you could practically reach 2 animals per acre, which is intensifying, while at the same time conserving or increasing the biodiversity within that particular area of space. What does that mean? Basically, more feed for the animal because you're managing pasture within a particular area. So you don't have to extend. When farmers are extending, it's because normally they lack pasture, they lack feed. So they are extending because they want to increase production, right? Simply because Belize, we have a very open market. Unlike any other commodity in Belize, the livestock market is open. Anything you produce, you can sell. And that really is sort of the conundrum that exists. Because you can sell anything, we will increase production. But what we need to do is to increase productivity.
The Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, represents a key partner in the process. For their part, a senior specialist for the Central American region, Omar Samoa, highlighted the importance of mobilizing resources for the sector's transformation.
As a multilateral development bank, we are supporting several areas where we can see there is an opportunity to support biodiversity conservation and natural capital. Livestock is a very important sector in the region, especially in Selva Maya, where is a territory that is shared with 3 countries, Belize, Guatemala, and Mexico. And today, or this week, we are discussing with people from these 3 countries in regards actions that we could implement to promote sustainable management in the livestock sector in this region. As an IDB, this is, again, an important topic where we see that there is an opportunity to support the conservation of biodiversity and natural capital. Basically, this is a topic that there is a general concerning around the world, and there are many countries, especially in the tropical areas, where the countries are addressing this issue, because it has implication not only in, for example, soil degradation, but also in some cases with the vulnerability of the climate. So by this reason is that the most of the countries, especially in the regional areas, are addressing this issue.
From the Guatemalan side, a representative of the cattle industry acknowledged the challenges but pointed to the benefits of a tri-national approach.
Sí, bueno, como le comentaba, uno de nuestros ejes importantes de trabajo es la competitividad, ¿verdad? En ese eje de trabajo, una de las más importantes líneas de acción es la ganadería sostenible. Queremos pasar de la ganadería extensiva a una ganadería que sea más intensiva y más integrada al ecosistema, ¿verdad? Porque vemos que el recurso tierra cada vez es más limitado, ¿verdad? Y debemos de sacar, no solo cuidarlo, sino saber sacar mejor provecho a nuestras áreas productivas.
Y los productores, ¿ellos están de acuerdo con este enfoque?
Creemos que es un cambio cultural que va sucediendo poco a poco, ¿verdad? Sobre todo porque las generaciones de nuestros padres anteriormente fueron formados en que para hacer ganadería había que tumbar, había que botar los árboles y había que plantar el pasto, ¿verdad? Esa fue la formación que ellos tuvieron. Actualmente sabemos que pues no puede hacerse de distintas maneras y puede ser de hecho más rentable, sobre todo porque el recurso tierra, pues su valor ha incrementado demasiado. No podemos hacer ya esa ganadería extensiva y tumbar árboles, porque al final lo que afectamos es el recurso hídrico, el recurso natural, biodiversidad, que sabemos que eso ha reducido la calidad de los suelos, ¿verdad? Porque ya no hay tanta regeneración. Entonces, cambiar esa mentalidad, creo que en las generaciones tal vez de nuestros padres está costando un poquito, pero vienen las nuevas generaciones que están adoptando estas prácticas con más facilidad.
The roundtable is expected to conclude with a roadmap for coordinated action that balances the economic importance of livestock farming with the urgent need to conserve the Selva Maya, one of the largest remaining tropical forests in Mesoamerica. Belize's Foreign Minister Francis Fonseca has expressed his willingness to present a public petition to the cabinet advocating for the removal of the visa exemption currently granted to Israeli citizens. The petition, spearheaded by the advocacy group Liberation 921, has garnered over 300 signatures so far, reflecting growing public engagement on the issue. Minister Fonseca emphasized that petitions from Belizeans are taken seriously and warrant careful consideration, although the final decision rests with the cabinet. The movement has gained momentum with a petition now exceeding 500 signatures, marking a significant step in local activism. Liberation 921 was founded with the goal of promoting justice, dignity, and liberation globally and domestically. Their initial campaign calls for the government to revoke the visa waiver for Israeli passport holders, citing concerns related to human rights and solidarity with oppressed communities, especially Palestinians, enduring ongoing violence. On Thursday, Minister Fonseca announced his readiness to bring the petition before cabinet for deliberation. However, his stance has been met with resistance as Reverend Senator Louis Wade Jr. criticized the initiative, characterizing it as hostile towards Israel. Wade emphasized that Belize's stance should remain neutral in order to genuinely foster peace and diplomatic balance in the region.
Well, the church leaders that I have spoken to so far are very concerned that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is already interested in coming to a decision regarding visa waiver for Israeli citizens, even though only about 350 petitions have been submitted. You will recall that whenever the church tries to get an opinion from the public, it's in the thousands and tens of thousands. And then that number, 300 or so, relates to the same number that triggered the referendum in Kikakor on a national issue. And so numbers matter. We would want the government to be considerate of the tens of thousands of Belizeans that have an interest in this story, whether as it relates to Israel or Palestine or any other foreign policy, would be that we want peace in the Middle East between Palestine and Israel. We want the hostilities to end. There are people that are hurting on both sides, whether they have lost children. Number two, we want diplomatic relations with Israel. Just as the government has embraced Palestine, renew the agreements with Israel. We want Belize to be a neutral partner in this situation. Belize should not be selecting sides. Why is it that we have selected Israeli citizens to ban from coming to Belize in some form or another? This is discrimination. Israeli tourists come to our country.
To help solidify the church's position, a petition will be circulated in the next few days based on the 3 points mentioned. Belize's economy expanded modestly in the second quarter of 2025, with gross domestic product (GDP) rising by 0.8% compared to the same period last year. According to the Statistical Institute of Belize, the total goods and services produced between April and June amounted to $1.375 million. Growth was driven mainly by strong performances in the primary sector, which increased by 10.9% due to higher agricultural, fishing, and mining output. The secondary sector also grew by 6.8%, boosted by gains in manufacturing, construction, and electricity production. Meanwhile, the tertiary sector, which includes services such as retail, transportation, and finance, recorded slower growth of 1.4%.
Now let's turn to the GDP estimate for the second quarter of 2025. Growth in the second quarter was driven by the primary sector, which was up by 10.9%. We also observed increase in production across all of the country's major agricultural products in the primary. Subsequently, we saw growth in the secondary by 6.8%, along with the tertiary by 1.4%. Again, just to state, the secondary sector grew by 0.8%. Goods and services produced in the second quarter totaled $1.375 billion, an increase of $10.7 million, or 0.8%, when compared to the second quarter of 2024. As we look at the industry contribution to the 0.8% for the quarter two, note that the primary drivers of economic growth were mainly agriculture and manufacturing. We also saw notable growth in construction as well. The industry with the most negative impact was wholesale and retail trade. However, we can also observe negative contributions from electricity, taxes, public administration, and other service activities.
For 2024, Belize's economy expanded by 3.5% overall, with total production valued at $5.257 billion.
Okay, for the year 2024, goods and services produced totaled $5.257 billion. This was an increase of $178 million, or 3.5%, when compared to 2023. Throughout the year, all three sectors recorded notable growth. The primary sector grew by 2.8%, mainly due to recovery from unfavorable weather conditions experienced in the previous year. The secondary sector was up by 3.3% due to improved performance across all secondary sector industries, coupled with the introduction of a local cement producing factory. While the tertiary sector reported the most significant growth of 4.6%, and this was the result of increases mainly in accommodation and food services, we saw growth in arts, entertainment, and recreation services, and then also in transport services. On the other hand, taxes on products declined by a marginal 0.7%. It is important to note that the annual GDP growth rate for 2024 of 3.5% differs from the estimated 8% derived from the quarterly GDP figures. This discrepancy is due to the fact that the annual GDP is based on a more comprehensive data set. Quarterly estimates are intended to provide a snapshot of economic activity during a specific point in time. However, these estimates do not have as comprehensive data set than the annual does.
Coming up next, Muffles Junior College celebrates Spirit of Giving with charitable donations. Stay tuned.
designs for Belize's new banknotes have been revealed. But why are only 2 national figures featured on the banknotes? The individuals honored on our new banknotes have received Belize's highest distinction, the Order of the National Hero. As of January 2025, only 2 persons have been awarded this title. The Right Honorable George Cadle Price, regarded as the father of the nation, who was the first Prime Minister of Belize and renowned leader in our road to independence, and the Honorable Philip Stanley Wilberforce Golson, one of the longest-serving members of the House of Representatives, known for his unwavering stance on protecting and preserving Belize. By featuring these heroes, we honor their invaluable contributions to the development of our nation. New look, same value, heroes' legacy. Learn more at www.centralbank.org.bz. A message from the Central Bank of Belize.
Looking for quality, tasty, and easy to prepare meals? Look no farther. M&M Frozen Foods, proudly distributed by United Distributors Limited, brings you a wide range of delicious frozen delights, perfect for every occasion. From frozen pizzas, quesadillas, garlic bread, jumbo samosa, cocktail samosas, pizza pockets, spring rolls, and happy noodles, M&M Frozen Foods is fresh, flavorful, and convenient for busy lifestyles. Whether you're planning a quick dinner, hosting a gathering, or stocking up for the week, M&M Frozen Foods has you covered. Available now at leading supermarkets and stores nationwide through United Distributors Limited. M&M Frozen Foods, extensive variety to satisfy every craving.
Maffels Junior College, the sole mercy-focused higher education institution in Central America, continues to embody its core value of compassion and service. Dedicated to instilling a spirit of generosity among its students, the college marked a special occasion emphasizing community support and kindness this morning. In a heartfelt celebration, the institution provided financial assistance to 3 organizations dedicating to aiding those in need, as well as to an individual undergoing cancer treatment.
In that spirit, then we ourselves took on to do charity work. We collected money and we chose several organizations in the community that are helping persons who are in some way or the other oppressed or are limited in finances because of challenges. And the students really came on strong, and we were able today to present financial assistance to 4 groups, and one group in particular is it's not a group, it's actually a person who is the mother of one of our graduates. We have many ills in society. We have illnesses, we have injustice, we have inequality. Not blaming any particular group or it's just circumstances of our lives, and we need to see how we can be a part of the solution to these challenges rather than the problem. Okay. And so we were able to have with us this morning the Vincentian Pastoral Outreach Group that helps the poor, the Solomon Day Adventist School Feeding Program, the individual who is struggling with cancer right now, and a group of people from San Joaquin, an elderly home that takes care of first shut-ins and people who are elderly and abandoned.
The funds for these donations were generously contributed by the students, faculty, staff, and administration themselves, reflecting their commitment to making a positive impact in their community.
Everybody at Maffels Junior College, students, faculty, staff, administration, were asked to contribute or to raise a minimum of $10. And then it was evenly divided so that on average, the 4 groups received somewhere around $1,300.
Okay, and is this something that will be carried on into the next year?
This is something that has been happening every year. So
But
it's
the
a
same way,
tradition.
financial assistance?
It's financial assistance. Some years we do go out and visit families. We go visit families in their homes, but other years we choose it this way. It depends on the group that is in charge at the school.
And how does it feel to see that students at MJC are actually following up on this tradition, and of course what is basically the mantra of the institution?
The school embraces it. The students, first of all, you don't see resistance, and that's a good sign. That's a sign of hope. It's especially our young people today, and it's not their fault. They are victims of circumstance. They're victims of their environment. There is a self-serving attitude that prevails in the world today. You know, the me syndrome. But if Muffles Junior College has been able to send out this message that it's not about you all the time, it's about others, then we have succeeded in a certain way. And I will tell you that the students did cooperate. The students have always cooperated. And in fact, I want to say, and if this could be featured, that last year, a mercy group at Muffles was formed without the school even suggesting it. It came from their own spirit. It came from their own heart.
This event underscores the college's mission to nurture not only academic excellence but also social responsibility among its students. Through acts of charity and compassion, Muffles Junior College aims to cultivate a generation of empathetic leaders prepared to serve others. Yesterday, we told you about the launching of official campaign in support of the upcoming referendum on cannabis legalization in Key Cocker. The initiative, led by Councillor Ilia Rosado under the umbrella of the group Legalize It Key Cocker, aims to provide accurate information, answer questions, and ensure that every voter on the island is well informed ahead of the historic October 8th vote. The referendum will ask voters whether the government of Belize should pass legislation to create a responsible, regulated, and taxable cannabis industry, with a portion of the revenue going directly to benefit Key Cocker and its residents. But Rosado and his team have their work cut out, because church leaders have also kicked off their Hope Not Dope campaign in Key Cocker. Their aim is to inform residents about the possible consequences of the legalization of cannabis on the island.
We have a larger volunteer team that's on the island. They also have their scrutineers and all the structures ready for the transportation and everything ready for the 8th of October. But I want to mention one more date, the 4th of October, because this weekend there's going to be campaigning on the island, but next weekend there's going to be a parade and a very large promotion. People will be coming from the mainland to go out to the island to support the no position. And the reason why citizens on the mainland need to be wary of the referendum that's taking place in Kikaka is because if they are asking for Kikaka to be the hub, if Kikaka will be the hub, you can't have a hub without a wheel. And so the rest of us are the wheel. So if they're establishing or trying to establish Kikaka as a hub, it's just a matter of time before they want to expand it to the entire country. And so I am really encouraging people on the mainland who have relatives on Kikaka to have a serious conversation with the villagers, and I want to ask the villagers of Kikaka to really take seriously what is being placed before you. I believe it is an issue of life and death. I have worked 7 years in drug rehabilitation. Marijuana is the most difficult one. I'd like to say marijuana is a lie, because by the time a person wants to get off marijuana, they are already experiencing very, very deep depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts. Those who escape that, it's either schizophrenia or dementia. So that is why I hate marijuana. It robs the youth. It robs people of their lives. And you see so many people wandering on the streets as if they have PTSD. Belize has never been to war. So why are so many of our young men suffering from PTSD and mental health issues? It is because of drugs and marijuana, and we need to stamp it out. That's why their campaign is hope, not dope.
Going back to SIB's presentation today, we take a look at external trade for the second quarter of 2025, where it shows that Belize imported $1.906 billion worth of goods between January and August 2025, an increase of 1.5% or $29.5 million compared to the same period last year. According to the Statistical Institute of Belize, top import categories included mineral fuels and lubricants, machinery and transport equipment, commercial free zone goods, and manufactured goods.
So starting with our merchandise imports for the period, we have a line graph showing how imports have been performing over the past 10 years for the first 8 months of these years. Despite a current decrease in imports when compared to 2024, imports have been on an upward trend since 2020. The total merchandise imports for the first 8 months of the year amounted to $1,906 million, down 1.5% or $29.5 million when compared to imports for the first 8 months of 2024.
During the same period, domestic exports totaled $277 million, marking a solid 10% increase or $30.9 million year-on-year. The strongest performers were marine products, bananas, red kidney beans, and molasses, while exports of sugar and animal feed declined.
Let's look at our domestic exports. Here we see a line graph showing how exports have performed over the past 10 years within the first 8 months. In general, exports have been on a downward trend with notable fluctuations seen across most of these years. For the period of 2025, the total domestic export for the first 8 months amounted to almost $277 million, representing a decrease of 10% or $30.9 million compared to the same period in 2024. Now, let's look at the products that contributed to the overall decline in exports. Sugar recorded the largest drop, with export earnings falling by 20% or $23.8 million, from $118.4 million to $94.6 million, primarily due to lower export prices for this product. Similarly, reduced prices for molasses resulted in an $11.5 million decrease, from $21.3 million to $9.9 million. Animal feed exports also declined during the period, falling from $9.9 million to $6.7 million. On the other hand, despite the overall decline in exports, several key products recorded notable increases. Marine exports experienced growth for the period, increasing by $6.8 million from $21.8 million to $28.6 million, largely due to larger shipments of lobster products and conch. Earnings from the red kidney beans nearly doubled, rising from $3.9 million to $7.8 million. Banana exports brought in $59.3 million in revenues for the first 8 months of 2025, marking a $3 million increase compared to the same period in 2024.
Destination exports to the United States grew sharply by 35% to $52.8 million. Exports to the United Kingdom rose by 2.7% to $97.1 million, while sales to CARICOM markets increased by 3.8% to $61 million. Belize's public servants are expected to receive a salary boost starting October 1st, 2025, as announced by the Ministry of Finance. The government has confirmed a 4.5% pay raise for the upcoming fiscal year 2025-2026, following the signing of the proposed framework agreement for salary adjustment in June. This pay increase will benefit a broad range of government workers, including permanent public officers, open vote workers, educators, officers of the Belize Police Department, members of the Belize National Coast Guard, and personnel of the Belize Defense Force. Pensioners will also see adjustments with the increase incorporated into their fixed annual pension payments. It's important to note that raise will not extend to employees on contractual or gratuity-based employment arrangements. The ministry clarified that salaries will be automatically updated according to the new pay scales, which also consider the implementation of a $5 minimum wage. However, there are specific exceptions for two pay scales. Pay Scale 1, the new entry level begins at 0.4. Pay Scale 2, the new entry level begins at 0.2. Additionally, the ministry advised public officers to disregard an earlier memorandum issued in August concerning salary matters. The circular confirming these changes was signed by Financial Secretary Joseph Waite. Belize's inflation rate stood at 1.3% for the period January to August 2025 compared to the same period last year. The Statistical Institute of Belize reports that the increase was mainly driven by higher prices for food and non-alcoholic beverages, housing, liquefied petroleum LPG, and personal care items. Food prices rose by 2.3% overall, with notable increases for bread, biscuits, pineapples, limes, and watermelons. Meat, purified water, and soft drinks also contributed to the uptick. The housing, water, electricity, and gas category rose by 2.4%, reflecting higher rent and LPG costs, while personal care items increased by 3%.
First 8 months in 2025, when compared to the same period in 2024, the cost of goods and services purchased by households increased by 1.3%. But before we look at the major categories that contributed to this increase, let's look at how the national inflation rate has been moving for the past 5 years. On the left, we have the national inflation rate from August 2020 to August 2025. It can be seen that from inflation from 0.1 in August 2020, there was a sharp increase up until mid-2022. Then inflation declined steadily with some fluctuations and continued to fall to 0.8% in August 2025. Now, on the right, we have the all-item consumer price index showing a steady upward trend from August 2020 to August 2025. The index rose from 100.6 in August 2020 to 112.2 in August 2022. Reflecting a sharp increase during the 2-year period. From August 2023 to August 2025, the CPI continued to rise, but at a slower pace compared to the earlier years. This indicates that prices have been increasing over the 5-year period. However, the rate of increase was higher between 2020 to 2022, followed by a more moderate rise between 2023 to 2025. Now, let's look at all the major categories and how much they contributed to the year-to-date inflation of 1.3%. We can see that the top 3 categories were food and non-alcoholic beverages, housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels, and personal care, social protection, and miscellaneous goods and services.
Across municipalities, San Pedro Tong 3.2% and Bamopan 3.1% recorded the highest inflation rates, while Independence Village was the only community to see a decline at negative 1.1%. Figures for Orange Walk and Corozal stood at 0.7% and 2.1% respectively. When compared regionally, Belize's 1.3% rate was lower than several neighboring countries, including Honduras, 4.5%, and Jamaica, 4.1%. And here is more news after the break. Stay tuned.
It is truly a proud and historic moment for us here in San Ignacio. It gives me great joy to welcome you all to the official opening of the very first wooden basketball court in our community.
The cost of the project in completion was about $200,000. Honorable Mala was willing to assist us with this project. This is a huge, huge investment for us.
There can be serious development through sports, especially if the right foundation, having the right facilities are in place. Then the programs follow. We can't put the carriage front of the house by having the programs, but we only have outdoor facilities. Belize rain 6 months out of the year, and having outdoor facilities is just not enough.
Our focus is going to be on education because that's a part of using sports as a vehicle to get as many of our athletes to international schools to play football, basketball, volleyball, track, whatever it is. The other thing is health. 33% of our people are afflicted by diabetes, hypertension, or some ailment like that. And those things can be prevented. So we want to create again the facilities where people can go exercise, have fun.
Authority BPA has issued a strong statement condemning what they categorize as recent false allegations suggesting irregular practices involving multiple government agencies during the departure and return of vessels participating in the Legacy of Champions International Fishing Tournament held in Roatan, Honduras. The BPA unequivocally rejects these claims, emphasizing that their operations adhere strictly to Belizean laws and establish maritime regulations. The authority's primary mandate is to ensure the safety of navigation within Belize's waters and to carry out regulatory functions transparently and lawfully, a release says. Following a comprehensive review of all relevant documentation submitted by vessel masters, the BPA confirmed that no irregularities occurred in connection with the vessels involved in the tournament. All procedures were executed according to established protocols, demonstrating the authority's commitment to lawful and transparent operations. Specifically, the allegations were linked to an individual who claimed misconduct but was identified by the BPA as a crew member, not a vessel master. Records show that the vessel in question departed San Pedro on September 9, 2025, with all required documentation, including a crew list that listed Mr. Jorge Aldana as part of the crew. The vessel's master applied for departure and the BPA issued department clearance number 018504 after verifying the documentation and collecting the applicable fees, documented by receipt number 122794. Upon the vessel's return to San Pedro on September 16, 2025, BPA officers conducted mandatory entry formalities, including inspections and completion of boarding form number 013342. All fees were duly collected and receipt number 123363 was issued in the vessel's master. These procedures were carried out transparently and in accordance with Belize's tariff regulations. All relevant records, including clearances, boarding forms, and receipts, have been securely archived and transmitted to BPA headquarters for compliance review. These records affirm that the Belize Port Authority acted properly, transparently, and within the bounds of the law throughout the process. The BPA reiterates its firm stance against any form of irregular activity and dismisses any unfounded accusations made without evidence. The authority emphasizes that its procedures are vital to maintaining maritime safety, security, and compliance within Belizean waters. The Belize Port Authority calls on all vessel operators and crew to adhere to established procedures, underscoring that compliance is essential for safeguarding Belize's maritime interests and maintaining the integrity of the country's maritime operations. The statement comes after Jorge Aldana, who was on one of the 9 teams that left San Pedro for the event, claimed on social media that no Belizean should be charged to leave or enter the country by a private Belizean registered vessel. Yet when we compete in fishing tournaments in Mexico or Honduras, we are charged $100 by immigration department officials, $100 by public health officer, $100 by Baja officers, and $100 by port authority officials. Aldana called the charges unfair, unacceptable, illegal, and a corrupt scheme run by these public officers on Ambergris Key. The Ministry of Home Affairs and New Growth Industries has introduced a new online platform that allows Belizeans to apply for their criminal records without having to stand in long lines at police stations. The service, operated through the Criminal Records Registry (CRR) of the Belize Police Department, is accessible at crr.gov.bz. Through the portal, applicants can complete an electronic form to validate their judicial history and choose whether to receive a secure digital copy of the record by email or collect a printed version at a designated police station. A frequently asked question (FAQ) page is also available to guide users through the process. The ministry noted that the initiative is part of the government's broader digital modernization push aimed at improving access to public services, cutting processing times, and offering greater convenience, particularly for those in rural areas. The ministry noted that the online system will streamline the application process while supporting Belize's wider digital government transformation. And that's the news. We invite you to join us for another newscast on Thursday, September 25th here on CTV3 News and Fiesta FM 106.7. Remember that to read a text version of the news, you can visit our website at ctv3belizenews.com. You can also log on to our Facebook page for current stories at facebook.com/CTV3BelizeNews or our YouTube channel at CTV3BZ. From all of us here at CTV3, thank you for watching and listening. Good night.